Welcome, Greater Heartland KW family. My name is Clark Kendall. I serve as your regional technology trainer. We are here for Ignite Session 11 on how to follow up with leads. So, if you've ever found yourself in a place where you've gotten leads, maybe an abundance of leads, and have yet not had the best practices or habits or systems around getting to the appointment, which is the whole intent, then stick around, watch this session with us. We're going to go through some great models, best practices with you today. So again, my name is Clark Kendall. I serve as a regional technology trainer, also a St. Louis area realtor, and also a MAPS coach. So definitely excited to be here with you. It's an honor. And as we go through this, I realize that those who are watching with us today might be visiting us in a few different capacities. One, you might be going along with our live regional schedule through the early summer days of 2022. All right. So, and if you're following that live schedule, you're either watching it your own on travel time or at home, whatever it might be, or you might be in the market center watching amongst your peers and leadership staff. Welcome. Welcome, and want to make sure that you have the resource that you need in the participant guide. So if you go to ignite.ghregion.com, there you will find the little card that says join as a participant. When you click on join as a participant, there's going to be a PDF guide there. And that PDF guide is every single session, and make sure you're on session 11. All right. And so if you're not watching live, maybe you found this YouTube video at a later point, or you've checked out the YouTube playlist and are catching up with some of these. Again, welcome. Definitely grab your participant guide and follow along with us as well. And wherever you're coming from or whenever you're coming into this training, encourage you to be present and would love to hear your ahas, your big light bulb moments, action items you're going to take away, or even questions that you have. Put those in the comment sections, and we definitely want to get to those and leave no question or awesome thing that you took away left unseen. Okay. All right. So we are here, yes, in Ignite Session 11, follow up with leads. This is something I'm very passionate about. One, because I failed so much at it and still am learning and growing mastery in this. And so as we go along, I'll use kind of an analogy here, right? We're going to have our content. You'll have your participant guide. We'll go through some slides. I've also found it helpful to find a nice, simple metaphor to use with this. So I'll be using the metaphor of going fishing in order to understand how we can best follow up, how we best show up and following up with leads. Now, this is something that you'll see as we go through the slides and the material, that a lot of this content, well, the majority of it is out of the book Shift. All right. So I'll be super techie here. If you see my camera, the book Shift, right? This is Shift, goes over Shift Tactic 5, getting to the table. All right, so there's a lot of models and best practices here. And Shift Tactic 5 mentions something about, hey, you know what? As Gary Keller would put in a book, I like to go catching instead of fishing, right? I like to go catching instead of fishing. So ask yourself the question, would you rather just sit around and casually just fish, or are you actually there to catch in your lead generation processes? So we'll use that metaphor as we go along. All right. So in our participant guide, let's get a quick overview here of where we're at Ignite. We are in the segment of Ignite that is lead follow-up. Now, we just previously joined in with Kyle Neiman out of Overland Park Market Center and KC Market Center Tech Trainer. I'm understanding, okay, well, how do I keep every lead? Once I obtain a lead, how do I make sure that I've captured that information, that I'm in a prime spot to begin good habits for lead follow-up, right? So this leads us into follow-up with leads today. And while we're walking through this piece here, you'll know that when we have this communication, right, when you have a lead, right, the goal here is to have a two-way communication, to begin ongoing two-way communication with that lead. I'm reaching out to them, they're reaching back out. We're building trust and rapport with each other, right? So today we're going to talk about what's happening next, right? Once you get that lead, of course, yes, the goal is to convert the lead to an appointment. Right. So after lead generation and after lead conversion really is the most business critical activity that you need to master. Leads can be pretty easy to find, right? I mean, you can go to an open house, maybe fill out a survey, put Facebook ads out there, generate traffic to your website to have some web inquiries. Right? I mean, honestly, it may not be too difficult to find leads. but it's actually the tough piece, the more challenging and opportunity for us to build good habits around lead generation that we need to master. Right? Because if you don't have appointments coming from those leads, let's just call out the obvious. All right. If you don't have appointments, you won't have a buyer or you won't have a seller. You won't have those agreements to begin working with them. And if you don't have those agreements, you're not going to have any sales. You're not going to have any commissions. You're not going to have that business worth owning. All right. So this is why it is so, so important. So, so important. So let's go into the agenda for today. So as you'll see here, our little timeline of what we're going to be covering today. Yet, generally speaking, we're going to apply. Okay, you're going to be equipped to apply the lead conversion model. Not a conversations, yet lead conversion model. Number two, you're going to develop a system for capturing, cultivating, converting, and closing leads. Capturing, cultivating, converting, and closing leads. And then thirdly, we're going to apply proven methods to increase your conversion rate over time. Right? You might feel like you've got some good lead follow-up systems. We're on the road to mastery. We're still all growing in this skill set, and probably will never be finished. All right, so let's see ways that we can improve those methods. So before we get going, this is an important piece. As a former educator, I taught at high school and college levels for 10 years. And one very, very powerful exercise to do before you go to learn something and something new, or open your mind to learning something in a different way, is to take a pause and think about, what would I like to learn today? What would I like to learn today? So consider some questions that you have about lead conversion and what you'd like to know about lead conversion. Now, you might be brand new, and this whole lead conversion idea is totally foreign or brand new to you. You might have got your license yesterday or still waiting for it to come in. That's okay. All right. Maybe it's a simple question. Well, what is lead conversion, or what does conversion look like? Or if you've already generated some leads, and it might be a very specific piece. How do I convert better at open houses? How do I convert better at Facebook leads? Whatever your question is, we're going to take 3 minutes here. 3 minutes. I want you to write down what you want to be able to learn from today, and then share it with somebody in the if you're in the market center, of course, turn to somebody, share it with somebody, make sure everybody in that room knows what you want to learn. Right. And of course, if you're also watching this maybe on your own at home or on the go, text somebody right now, right? Maybe your accountability partner, your coach, your team leader, and say, hey, I'm watching this session on lead follow-up, and here's what I'm hoping to learn. All right. So go ahead and take that. We'll take 3 minutes and be right back. All right, welcome back. And hopefully you've got a little bit of key in notion of what you want to learn today for lead conversion. So we're going to go into, of course, the agenda, the specifics. The first portion of our timeline today, learn what lead conversion actually is. All right. So lead conversion, as we mentioned, it's an essential part in the lead follow-up process. Oftentimes that once we get into business, people assume that, you know what, lead generation, generating that lead, finding those names, those people, first connecting with them or first attempting to connect with them, that lead generation and lead conversion are the same thing. Yeah, that's absolutely not the case. Let's get that out of our mind. Lead generation, lead follow-up are two distinct different activities. All right, so let's just briefly revisit lead gen. And let's bring it back into this idea of fishing. All right, so at its core, lead generation is when you turn activities, right? And then we talked about what lead generation is: prospecting, having conversations, intentional real estate conversations, and marketing, more passive offers or reaching out into leads. Okay, so we're doing those activities, turning them into leads. So equate that lead generation to having a good fishing day, right? You're planning out a fishing trip, maybe it's just a day trip, and you're getting all your tackle box and rods and reels and all the get up, your hat, sunscreen, everything, and you're going to the lake. Right. So while you're going to the lake, all right, your intent is to go fishing. You got everything ready, and then you, of course, get on the water, whether you're on the bank or the boat or whatever it might be. You got all your gear, your setup, you got the bait on the hook, and you throw it out in the water. You're lead generating. You're starting to get some nibbles. You're starting to get some nibbles, and we would call that, I guess in this metaphor, a lead. All right. Now, once your rod is in the water, let's just keep that going there. Your rod is in the water. You are in the activity of lead generating. All right. And you got leads that are coming back and forth. You got fish that are swimming back and forth. Right. And yet, how are you going to show up after that point? How are you going to show up after that first casting into the water, after going to that first open house and having those first conversations or receiving those first leads and from the Facebook ad? How are you going to show up after that? And this is what we're talking about in lead conversion, because lead conversion happens after the lead is captured, right? Or maybe you're getting those first nibbles, right? Or maybe even have something on the hook. It's ready to go. So it's part of lead follow-up. So this is unique because there are activities that turn leads into appointments with the end goal of a transaction. There's specific activities, just like going to that open house, or just like door knocking, just like calling your sphere. Right? There's very intentional activities to make sure that we can get to the table. So while we're moving in here, here's a quote, one of my favorite quotes, and we've seen this one before. The effort you give to converting leads must match the effort you give to generating them. They are distinct activities, and your effort, your energy, your excitement, your drive, it needs to be matched just as much as what you had with lead generating as with lead follow-up. Just as much. So just a question here to ask yourselves, to ponder on real quick, is why do you think both of these activities, lead generation, lead conversion, deserve the same amount of time spent? And then maybe think about your own past experience. You know how maybe those conversations have gone really well with follow-up, and maybe you think that they haven't. And I'll share my opinion here is that, you know what? Not all fish are ready to be caught in that moment. Not just yet. Maybe I haven't made the bait, the offer, my value, what I can do for them apparent enough or attractive enough to begin to have a more conversation, to have an appointment. I mean, I haven't figured out what that script or that truth that I can bring into the value that I can bring into them. I just haven't begun my own skill set in it. All right, so here's our lead conversion process. We're going to introduce this. Let's dive into this. We're going to, in your participant guide, make sure you turn to the lead conversion process page. It looks similar to this. And this is actually introduced on page 87 of the Shift book. All right, so make sure you see this diagram here. It's got the 4 different steps here, the different shapes. All right, but I also want to bring your attention to the shift book, page 86. All right, so I want to read this out of page 86 of the shift book. Of course, you also see it on the slide here. It says consistently getting every possible appointment from the leads you generate. It's not complicated, but it does require preparation, practice, and purposeful action. So it's not complicated, but it does require preparation, practice, and purposeful action. You might have heard the term in real estate or some other trainings that, you know what, success in this, well, it is simple, but it's not that easy. It doesn't just happen by happenstance. All right, so let's look at this. The chart, this model here, it starts at the top with capture. You must capture the correct information and have enough information in order to contact the person. Now, when we just met with Kyle last session, we talked about this, right? Being able to obtain that data, put it in Command or your CRM if you use a different one, but be able to have enough information to be able to reach back out. Admittedly, I've been to a lot of open houses where a lot of the people have come in and I haven't obtained that information from them. And then some based on really how I show up, I'll be honest that there's times I didn't show up too well and I got less information. And times I showed up really well that it was a wealth of data that I put in the database and a great opportunity to begin follow-up. All right. So in capture, ask yourself, and again, in all this, how am I showing up in every single one of these phases? What does it look like to capture information at a high level and to be present and to engage to make sure I capture the information? Because you don't get this from this first one, right? Whatever your lead gen source is, you can't move on to the next ones. Like I said, I had a lot of open house surveys that were half filled out that had a name at the top, but didn't have any phone number or information on them. Even though I gave them the opportunity, I didn't show up in the way or something prevented me from getting that. So make sure we understand capture is so important. We have to have the information. Otherwise we can't follow up. It's all for naught, whatever lead gen activity we're doing. All right, so then you move on to connecting, right? Building a connection, gaining more information and building trust. And this is this one-way communication, reaching out to them. And then I know this diagram might look a little bit different. It's like, hey, well, 4 is on the side. We're going to shoot down to number 3. It ends with closing for an appointment. Again, without an appointment, conversion hasn't happened. Unless you've had that appointment, all that lead gen activity, whatever time, money, energy you spent, however many cookies you bought, however many miles you walked door knocking, conversion hasn't happened unless you got the appointment. All right. So I'm going to ask you a question here. Ponder this. When the conversion step does not result in appointment, what do you think happens next? All right. So say I've captured the information. I'm going to use open houses as just this process because it is a big lead source for my team and has been from once I began my career. Once I've captured that information, I've got the survey and I've got the opportunity to connect with them, and yet I still haven't closed for the appointment. All right. I've built good rapport. We're conversing back and forth. They're answering my emails and texts, but I still haven't got an appointment. What happens? Well, that's where step number 4 comes in here. You continue to cultivate the lead as a part of your regular follow-up, your regular lead follow-up program until they're ready to convert for an appointment. That number 4 right there that you see on the slide, that cultivate, this is where the not easy part comes into this, right? This model is simple to understand, but it's not easy because of the cultivate. There's a lot of skill, mindset, and the opportunities in the moment that can really make this either really impactful for us or a total loss for us. All right. So cultivate is where the money is going to be made. And we'll get more into that. All right. So let's move on here. After lead generation, right? You got lead conversion. We share this that's the most business critical portion here. And you're going to master that. This is where possible business that comes from whatever lead gen activities you're doing in the probable business and then ultimately in the profitable business. And we shared this on session 10. But converting the lead to an appointment has so much importance because it is how you have a chance at earning income. Okay, that's how you make money. Converting appointments to business, it's key to actually making a profit. For you to be able to stay in real estate, you have to do this. You have to. So we're going to learn more about converting appointments on converting the appointment to business on day 14. And yet we're talking about, okay, what does this really look like to cultivate? All right. So until then, we're going to focus on the how. Now that you know the why of lead conversion, on the how and the why. So that probably sounds like a pretty good thing, right? Before we jump into the how, which I'm sure you're just chomping at the bit for, we're going to get some ahas here. So take 3 minutes here. We're going to write down some ahas. Whatever you heard that really spoke to you. All right. What are you presently taking away? What are you hearing within in your own mind or own limiting beliefs or something that you received in here that would be good for you to write down and also share with somebody else? So we're going to take 3 minutes, write that down. If you're present in your market centers, share it with one another there, maybe just your partner, somebody closest to you. Or if you're again watching this on your own, love to hear your first aha in the comment section. Also text somebody that first comes to mind. Hey, this is where our understanding what lead conversion is. Here's what I now know. Here's what I am now just realizing. All right, so share that. We'll be back in 3 minutes. All right, welcome back. Trust you got those ahas and share them out loud or shared it with somebody else. Reminder, we've said this many times. Ahas can be an acronym for agents, helping agents. Don't keep those ahas to yourself. give that gift to someone else. So I want you to turn to the lead conversion process, the capture page in your participant guides, right? That's the capture page in your participant guides. We're going to move on along here. And I told you we go into the hows, right? How to convert a lead to an appointment. So in capture, we're going to spend a little bit more time. Now, we introduced this just a moment ago. Yes, capturing is defined as collecting the minimum amount of valid contact information of a potential buyer or seller. At its simplest, that's all it is. It's valid information for a potential buyer or seller. Now, you might see that and be like, well, okay, potential buyer or seller, whatever lead source I'm doing right now, they're not really buyers and sellers. Potential. We didn't give a time to that, did we? We didn't say in the next 30 days. We didn't say in the next 3 months, 6 months. We didn't say in the next 3 years. Everyone will have real estate needs. So anybody you can get in contact with, granted their need might not be that urgent right now, still capture it. They're a potential buyer or seller. Everyone is, right? Everyone is. Don't set a limitation on a time frame right here and now on capturing information. All right. So make sure you get an email, any way to communicate with them, the preferred method as well. You might even have a way to make sure that you're aware of being able to how they like to, or what their preferred method of communication is. You can easily track that, mark that in command for your information. So yes, whether it's an email, phone number, most likely, of course, this will happen in lead generating. So thinking through what are certain methods that you have used in capturing this information, this vital information. What ways? Think about your lead source. How are you currently capturing that information? All right. Now, again, if you're open houses, my approach always was little mini clipboard surveys. Instead of a sign-in sheet, I gave a survey to everybody who walked through the door and asked for feedback and then engaged in conversation with them. So everybody had it in their hand. I didn't like the sign-in book because there was a line and people would skirt around it and find a way. They were very, very tricky in avoiding that line. So I handed it to them and asked for it back. All right. So that'd be one option for open houses. How are you capturing that information through door knocking? Do you have a QR code that allows them to automatically text you or to send them to a landing page to where you can capture that information? All right. So what are some methods that you are currently using for capture? Maybe you want to jot those down, or you're like, hey, you know what? Big question mark. I don't have any. We're not going to get into the specific lead gen sources on best capture ways or methods of capturing. So if you got a big question mark, I don't know how, there's a follow-up. Reach people in your market center, reach out to your Facebook groups. We have an abundance of ones. How are people capturing leads this way through this lead gen source? All right, some other ideas here. Response, of course, to social media ad. If you do it through command, if you have a lead capture or you have the lead capture form in command when you're creating a Facebook ad, well, those automatically do come into command, which is nice. It's kind of nice, easy button there. Of course, you also might have mailers or flyers, and they have, again, a QR code to scan or a number to call. All right, so know that there's a lot of different methods, and some are going to be more automatic than others, and some are going to really require some effort on the part of that potential lead. All right, so be aware what that method is, and just some advice. If it is a flyer or if it's a for sale sign and something that really requires action to be taken part of that lead, that could possibly be a pretty a lead that's more urgent than others. Not a hard fast rule, but if somebody's calling a for sale sign, that's a pretty intentional activity as opposed to maybe scrolling on Facebook and seeing a really cool house, your listing ad, and clicking on it just because they want to see the inside. Still a valid source of lead capture, yet they're just know that different methods might bring a different type of lead urgency. All right, so let's stick here on capturing. So of course it's important to know that when you're going to know what you're going to say before you start the conversation, right? So in your participant guide there that you should see, right? If we're on the capture page, there's some conversation frameworks to ask for information. All these are simple. Hey, if I were need to contact you, what would that number be? If I found exactly what you're looking for, how would I contact you? If I found out that information you're wanting, how would I best get it to you? All right. For the first step of capture, it's to have a system in place. You got to have a system. All right. Capture all your leads in your database. Continue to cultivate the relationship using touch campaigns. We talked about that in session 10. Right. And so it's important to have a system in place to receive that. If your current lead gen source and you're spending a lot of time, energy, and effort, and you're not getting the information, it's time to change the system. Time to find a better script, or actually do a script. Ask for the information. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. Because if you don't ask, well, let me take a step back. If you're not currently getting that information, all right, ask yourself what's preventing you from asking. Is it fear of rejection? Well, you're already being rejected because you're not getting the information to begin with. So why not ask? Right? Ask for the information. Again, we'll talk more about on value and pieces to encourage being able to give more information. But yet you got to ask. You got to ask in a way that's, of course, comfortable and pointed for you. All right. So all leads, of course, they're not going to be ready for the appointment. So your goal here is it's to gain mind share by putting them in the database, continue to drip on them, have those touches that we talked about at mind share, and stay in that close emotional proximity. All right. Now, those are some big, larger words. Emotional proximity, meaning we want to stay, want to give them the good feels and be close and providing those good feels to them. All right. So when they are ready, they think of you. Right. And they appreciate how you've reached out, how you've continued to be persistent in the care and value that you've given them. All right. So let's work on an activity here in your participant guide. And so we want to make sure you have a system in place for your capture. Again, I told you, you're not just going to be receiving, you're getting to action. You're going to have a system for whatever lead gen source here. So we're going to work on this independently. All right. And you can share this afterward. So what I want you to do here on your participant guide, you're going to have some questions there. All right. There's 4 questions. How are you currently capturing leads? What information are you collecting? What are your current lead gen categories? Tags in your database. If you're confused on that question, what are your current lead categories or tags, lead sources? And what can you do to improve your current capture system? Now you might be here, it's like, I don't know, but this is giving you the space to focus in on that all important, what I see is the most important question here, number 4. What can you do to improve your current capture system? You may not have taken the pause, the slowdown to move forward. Use this time to think through, what could I do to improve your current capture system? If you don't know, how could you find out? All right. So we're going to take, let's call it 7 minutes here to go through these questions. And if you get through them real fast, hopefully you did give some purposeful thought, and yet go through these questions here, take a little quick water break if you need to come back, because we're going to get back engaged. And yet we'll take 7 minutes to work on those 4 questions there. We'll be right back. had some great answers, or at least some headway to make in identifying answers to make your capture all the more effective, right? Being present in this lead conversion. So let's move on to our second step in the model here, and that is to connect. Right? So connecting is all about laying the foundation of a working relationship, the foundation for a working relationship. So what's important about this step is to listen, right? This is probably the easiest piece here if we build the skill set in listening, asking good questions, here from that, offering solutions to the problems that we learn, and of course, keeping the focus and the conversation on them, right? Your potential client. All right, so the goal here of this communication, of course, yes, in addition to building the relationship, is to determine their urgency, right? So, of course, give enough information to know how to prioritize this lead. Of course, from that, knowing their urgency, knowing what information you've gathered, knowing what type of right touch campaign, what's the appropriate touch campaign that you can use to follow up as a plan, right? So we'll go a little bit more in here because questions are important. Listening is important. So we're going to share some questions. Before we do, here's some best practices to keep in mind. You see it on the slide. So make jot note of these. Number one, embed your value proposition into the conversation to position yourself as a local expert. All right, embed your value proposition. This is into the conversation. Doesn't say lead with your value proposition. Here's who I am here, or here's who we are and what we do. It's mixed into the conversation as you're learning, you're discovering, you're curious about their situation. Number two, build and have confidence through knowing what you are going to say. So you got to role play. You got to practice these conversations. Also set some time aside knowing the market data, maybe the hyper local market they're looking to make a transaction in, or where their need currently is present, right? I like number two because it helps us understand that, hey, in order to embed our value proposition and making that comfortable and feel comfortable and natural and having confidence in that, it's going to take practice, right? So practicing those conversations is key through role play with your partners, for accountability partners, or whoever might be willing to walk through that with you. And number three, use a backward design when thinking about the communication. Begin with the end in mind. Think about the intended outcome before starting the conversation, right? Now, well, what's the intent here? Well, yeah, it's to understand their needs and to apply a solution for you being that solution, whether in the short term, right now, to help them with their real estate need, or long term, maintaining communication, helping them with whatever solution that they need. You provide that value, right? But again, the intent of the outcome is one, to be curious, to be now made more aware of their situation and possibly how you can help them. Okay, so let's dive in some to see these important questions, and these again are in the Tactic 5 of the Shift book, and these are the 6 connection questions. All right, so there you should have the 6 connection questions in your participant guides. All right, so make sure you turn to those. And so know this, right? Oftentimes when we think about connecting and being curious, understanding their needs, it's not just small talk, right? It's not just shooting the breeze, how the weather's going, what what they happen to have plans for the summer. It is a purposeful question time, a purposeful time for you to learn. So these 6 questions help us guide in that. So through these 6, just read them off here. Who are they? What do they want or need to do? Where do they want or need to do it? Why do they want or need to do it? When do they need or want to do it? And how do they plan to do it? I love these six the connection questions here, because you can go layers deep in each one of these. Who are they? My goodness. I'm sure there's enough in every single one of our lives to go pretty deep on that. And yet, as we move through these questions, getting to number 6, it's a journey of helping them open up, right? Whoever you're speaking with, whoever you're asking these questions of, and then you've got a awesome skill set in going deep and understanding who they are and who, what, when, where, why, and how. Then they're going to open up. All right. So in your participant guide, you have some examples of what those six, excuse me, connection questions might look like in a conversation. All right. Should be right there in your participant guide. So these may not work for your unique business, but take some time to plan out a framework for conversation that does work for your business and for your value proposition. All right. So make sure that you practice these conversations because it will help the conversation feel more natural and you'll be able to intentionally connect with the person or the persons and you'll qualify them simultaneously. Right. By asking these six questions, are you probably going to figure out how urgent they need to make this real estate decision? Yeah, as long as you go deep on it, right? Because you say, hey, when do you want or need to do it? If you're asking that question, when do you need to make a move? They might say 6 months, or you might be able to dive a little bit more deeper. What's important about that 6 month time frame? What is there a certain event that's happening then, or what's guiding that time frame? Right. So you can go deep on every single one of these questions. And in this, don't forget the Ford. Here's a great thing. If you've been plugging along, going with us on this Ignite journey, and you've been practicing Ford, you're already going to make these six questions all the more powerful because bring Ford into it. All right. So that allows that relationship to deepen. All right. Because if you ask, when do they need or want to do it? Then if you've already had a conversation or know who they are and family, like, well, great. How does that 6 months impact your children? Right. How does that relate to your job? Is there any job shifts here or anything to consider that might change your occupation? So these skill sets, right? These are all great questions where we're learning for them. Here's another key piece, right? While you're gathering this, and as we talked in session 10 about growing your database, right? Capturing the leads, capturing the information. It's also going to be important to document these conversations and the outcomes in your database and in your CRM and Command immediately after talking to the buyer or seller, right? Because as you have more and more appointments, the intent is to get to the table here, right? Whether it's an actual conversations leading up to appointment or appointment itself, you're going to have a record of that communication. Now, you're going to be talking up and following up with a lot of leads to hit your goals. Everything's not going to be clear. Your memory is not going to be that strong. What the specificities are of that conversation that are important. All right. So it may be a great practice while you're logging these actions. If you use these 6 connection questions, where are your answers for every single one of these when you log an activity in Command? Right. So we demonstrated that in session 2, how to log an activity, right? To log a call, log a meeting, log an email, text, whatever that looks like. But if it's an actual conversation you're going to have, where are your 6 conversations in this? Now, maybe a little 201 tech piece here. Yes, a great practice. You could create custom fields in Command. All right. You can have 6 custom fields, and the question is simply each custom field is one of these questions. Right. And that's your guidance on how they're answering that. Just an idea. Okay. Anyways, keeping a strong, well-documented record of that communication, all those conversations is going to help you know how to move that relationship forward. Right. And of course, how to come from contribution in the future. Of course, it's also going to help you understand how to prioritize that lead. Right. This is an important piece, right? Because if you're lead generating, you're going to start following up. Keep the record. That way you can easily recall it on the next conversation, or as you're preparing for that appointment finally, right? You can bring up those list of calls and be like, oh yeah, they did mention that, it's important for them to have 2 acres of land for whatever reason. All right. Okay. All right. Moving on here. We are into cultivate. All right. Now, I know that we normally we had talked about the close, right? And in the process of introducing these, we went from close to cultivate. And yet, knowing this is such an important piece here, we do want to visit cultivate before we actually close. All right. So turn to the page in your conversion process. It's a cultivation page. So your goal here in using this lead conversion model, it's to move immediately from capture to connect to close. Yeah, we spoke about this. You're going to find a small percentage of leads, or depending on your lead source, maybe a large percentage of leads that won't be ready to convert for an appointment. right? Spoke about this earlier. If you have a lot of Facebook leads that people are casually scrolling, just wondering what inside of a house looks like, you're probably going to get a higher percentage of those leads that won't be ready for an appointment yet in comparison to the sign calls that you receive on a listing, right? So again, we mentioned this here, to keep mind share, you're going to use a touch campaign to stay in communication and cultivate that relationship until they are ready for an appointment. Right now, again, we've talked on this in a few sessions before, right? But a 19 to connect, that one value piece when you do connect, or the 36 to convert, these will help you leverage to stay in that close contact until you get the appointment. Right. Now, as you start to implement these touch campaigns, you can always pursue creating your own touch campaigns, right? Ones that fit your business needs. And I would recommend don't overcomplicate this. Get in action with at least a 19 to connect, a 1 to cement, and a 36 to actually convert. Now, depending on your lead source, we talked about this in session 10. It might, based on the lead source, if it's an open house, you might have an intensive, quick follow-up smart plan. Maybe it's an 8x8, 8 touches in 8 days, or 8 touches in 8 weeks, whatever fits for your business. To begin there, and then long-term, put them on a 19 to connect if you haven't connected with them yet. So you're going to have to gauge that urgency on that lead source and say, what makes sense? And the 19 to connect, just a quick recap here. It's 4 calls every quarter. Or excuse me, not 4 calls every quarter, a call every quarter, 4 calls a year. Is that the appropriate follow-up? Is that an intensive enough of a plan for somebody that came through an open house and put on the sign-in sheet, we're looking to move in 3 months? Yeah, I'd argue that probably not. You probably need to up that communication, right? But again, don't be arrested by not having that plan in place. At least start with a 19 to connect, 1 to cement, and 36 convert, and develop more plans out as it makes sense for your business. Okay. So again, cultivation. This is the step in the model where a lot of us find ourselves struggling. I've struggled, and be honest, and sometimes still do. It's a part of building mastery, right? Simple question here. Why? Why do you think agents struggle? Maybe you struggle in that cultivation stage. All right. Why do you think agents struggle in this cultivation stage? And I want to get, because it's an important piece. This is where you've heard the phrase fortune in the follow-up. Well, cultivate. This is the follow-up they're speaking of, where money is made. Why, if we know that this is where the money can be made, why do we struggle with it so? Okay, so again, maybe think through your own limiting beliefs or your own habits that are around this, or maybe just awareness. I don't have an awareness that this is where I need to really put my energy into and build my skill set. I'd offer this this as a solution, and not that it's my solution. Again, the Shift book talks about this. Agents struggle with this simply because they don't have the right systems in place to continue to follow up with that lead. Right? Or, and let's assume, okay, you do have the right system, you just haven't developed the habit enough. Right? You haven't developed that habit enough in order to become a disciplined part of your business activities. Right? So yeah, I'm not talking at you, talking to myself through this virtual attendees. We let the lead slip. Right? We get disappointed when they learn that the lead is transacted with a different agent. Oh my gosh. I can't recall all the times that that's happened. It still happens, right? And it's not that I'm perfect in this, and none of us really are. And yet, man, yeah, there's nothing tougher than know that you spend an open house and maybe you didn't put those people in the database and you didn't put them on a touch plan. They're kind of sitting there, and there's something in the back of your mind like, oh yeah, that was a good open house. Sure, there's opportunity there. Yeah, I hope I don't miss anything. And day goes on, weeks go on, and then all of a sudden you call them back. You're finally going to follow up with them, and they appreciate the call. And yet they already found an agent. They already bought a house. I've made those follow-up calls before. That's on me. That's on us as agents. So we got to have the right systems, right? Don't let the lead slide to somebody else, especially when you invested that time to lead generate. Don't let it go to waste. Right now on the slide here, haven't got to this yet, but this reminds us, right? You can't know or predict when somebody's going to come to a decision, right? You can't predict when they're going to come to a decision. You can't make somebody who's currently motivated, say, level 5 out of a scale of 10. You can't force them into being a level 10 motivated buyer or seller. Can't do it. No salesman's that good. And if you're that good, you probably don't want to, you're probably not doing it in an ethical way that really serves them if their motivation isn't there. But here's the thing. If you're reconnecting with them in a systematic way, you'll have a great chance of being there when they do make that decision. So that's when you'll be able to close for an appointment. It just tells us there. Right? You won't know when they're ready to come to the decision until you reconnect with them in a systematic way. That's all it is. It's a system. All right, so let's get to close. So when asking for, well, actually, let me hold off here. Make sure you turn to your close page in the participant guide. All right, turn to your close page in the participant guide. So here you're going to find more information on the types of closes to use when you role play or practice conversations before you get into real play of actually making these follow-up conversations. So use this as a resource after Ignite it as well. But again, simply closing is when you ask for the appointment. You've earned the right to ask for the appointment. Think of it in this framework here for you. Okay. You're concluding one conversation, right? And you're seeing if there's a new one that can take place. Every conversation, every follow-up touch, the 19 to connect, or every call that you make, every text that you send out, right? You're just ending that conversation and wondering, you know what? Hey, I wonder if this needs to be another conversation, if a new one can take place. And in that, it's your responsibility to see if that next communication makes sense to be an appointment for them. All right. So just like the touches that you use to stay in emotional proximity, like they have varying degrees of effectiveness, right? Some touches are more powerful, more valuable than others. They're not all created equal, and that's okay. Right. So does the format. So does the message which you ask for a close. All right. So you could ask for the close. If we're talking about this method of which we're making the ask in a text message, you see here, in an email, on a phone call, or in person. Now, asking this rhetorically, yeah, which one of these formats would you think would be the most effective, the strongest? Right? What do you think are the weaker options? If establishing that rapport, communicating that value, really hearing from them, which one? Which one of these has the strongest, the most effective impact? Which are the weaker options? Now, it might be an easy answer here, or maybe not, but let's just put it out there. Right? The least effective options are in writing. Right? Our communication, as effective or preferred it might be to be in a text message or your own preference in text messages or emails, because you're not communicating together in real time. And we know we've heard about the effectiveness of communication, what's really being told in person, eye to eye, or over the phone, right? You lose some of the impact and what's really being said by text message or emails in that written format, Facebook messages, whatever it is. You can't immediately respond to any issues or questions they might have. The flow, the energy, it's missing from those, right? So phone calls, yes, phone calls and in-person options, they're going to give you the best effect to have on lead conversion. That's not to say you can't have text messages that lead up to a phone call, right? And even having purposeful text message be like, hey, you know what? I really enjoy this chat. I want to ask you some specific questions. I think we can move further through a phone call, right? I want to share something with you I think would be more powerful in a phone call or in person, right? You can make those asks, close for those appointments in a text message or an email. But there's nothing wrong with starting those, but just know the effectiveness of how you're making that appointment. Okay, so let's move on here. When you're setting the appointment, right, what are important elements of schedule? Let's get real basic here. When you're setting the appointment, what are the important elements that you want to schedule this for? What are you looking to accomplish in scheduling this? First, okay, you're not just looking for a yes as a response, right? Which you're probably thinking, well, I would want a yes, right? Okay, well, let's think this through. You want to make sure that yes should get you immediately on the schedule, right? At everyone's earliest convenience, all the parties that would be involved, your earliest convenience. All right. So this means date, time, location. Get that knocked down. Don't just say you want to meet for an appointment. Get all the info from that. Don't miss that. And so even if it's don't make assumptions on this either, right? Somebody might be saying, hey, you might be thinking you want to have a Zoom appointment and they might be automatically thinking it's going to be a phone call. Right. So thinking if it's a virtual location, make sure they know the vehicle for that or in-person location. So that's important. Right. So make sure you get the date, time, location, all that. So one thing to keep in mind is this location. We'll talk more in depth in the transaction section, that last section of Ignite here. When we cover buyer and seller consultations more in depth. So in that, just like make sure you're aware, keep in mind safety. We'll talk more about safety, but can't stress that enough, right? While you're having a location, if you're unsure who this person is, you don't have that rapport or you can't vouch for who they are, meet in public, right? Meet in public, local coffee shop, what cafe, whatever it might be. All right. Excuse me here. So I want you to turn to now the KW belief system. It's in your participant guides. All right. Turn to the KW belief system and your participant guides. And I'm going to share this quote with you here. Make sure we're on the right one here. There we go. All right. So you'll see this here. This statement is about closing for the appointment. And this directly comes from Shift, as you see here. And so as I see this quote, the reason why to turn you to the belief system, it reminds me of our Y4C2Ts. All right. So if I want to read this through, it might be hard for you to see this here, wherever you might be at. But it says, in the end, if they can meet and they have a good enough reason to meet, they will meet. And if they don't, they won't. And that's okay. You really don't care what their answer ultimately is because you are not getting people to do anything they don't want to do. You're just going to ask and respond until they agree that meeting with you makes sense or it doesn't. Either way, you both win. I love this quote. I would have this printed out, maybe as a wallpaper, a little reminder, put it in your planner, whatever it is. I love this quote because it takes a little bit of the pressure off, right? A lot of us that might be in sales or feel the pressure of sales, we're not asking anything they don't want to do. And if we can calmly and confidently perceive their readiness, and whether or not it does make sense, then it's an easy transition to understand how we can best help them and have that appointment. All right. So when you think through that, okay, what belief system does that make you think of? And in our Y4C2Ts, think about that. You can reference that. So, I mean, I'd be curious, but for me, it really does come. The one that stands out is win-win or no deal. Win-win or no deal. Right? I mean, maybe because it's just evident. It's like, yeah, Clark, because it says win at the end. Either way, you both win, win-win or no deal. All right. Yeah. Maybe I'm simple-minded in that. It's probably true. But yet also it could be integrity, do the right thing. I'm trying to push them to a solution. Like say they're not ready to sell until 2 years from now and they're comfortable where they're at. Right. And I'm telling them that they need to, they have to, they're going to miss out. Is that the right thing to do? Is that coming from integrity? All right. So, yeah, think through that. Maybe there's a different belief system. Maybe jot that down, something that resonate with you there. But what we're also going to do is get some ahas going. We're going to take another 3-minute break here. Write down your ahas. Shout them out in the room once you have yours. Raise your hand. Facilitators, if you're there in the market centers, of course, receive those and share those out with each other. Again, agents helping agents. All right, write those down. What really spoke in this last section, and we'll be back in 3 minutes. All right, you're back. We got some ahas. You shared them, all the good feels. We're ready to move on. In our agenda here, we're close. This is our last section before we do some final recaps. And so we're going to improve your conversion rate. So even if you've been in the business for a while and feel like you got a great follow-up system, I trust that you are learning based enough and ready to grow even more in that, increase your rate even more so. So I want you to refer to the conversion rates in your participant guide. And there's a lot of good resources in this session in your participant guide there. And so from at least at this point in this session, right, we've learned the model. We walk through that model. And walk through the steps and the actions it takes to convert a lead to appointment. So now we're going to dig deeper into what a conversation rate is and how it can help inform your business decisions, right? We can use data to help inform business decisions. You as a business owner, that's a wise thing to do. All right. So your conversion rate, let's just put it out there. You may not know what this is. Conversion rate refers to the percentage of leads you ask for an appointment to those that agree to appointment. Say it again. The percentage of leads you ask for an appointment to those that agree to the appointment. All right. Now, you might hear other conversion rates in here about leads received and then leads to the appointment. I get that, but we just talked about asking for the appointment. We're going to make the assumption that you're asking for the appointment. If you're not, you're going to have a big goose egg of a conversion rate anyways. All right. So if you're asking for the appointment, this is where this ratio becomes very, very insightful. All right, so say, for example, you may ask 10 leads from an open house, right? You got all the information, you got permission to reach back out. You got them on your 8x8. Now you're 19 to connect. And so you succeed in setting 8 appointments as you continue to ask, as it makes sense, as they're willing and it fits their goals. That's an 80% conversion rate, right? 8 divided by 10, 80%. Now your ultimate goal in this, yes, it's getting an appointment. Yet over time, as you become a better and better agent, you get more skilled and more comfortable with this and see the opportunity. Your ultimate goal is increase your skill in this. So you convert at the highest level, the highest percentage possible, right? Because of course, the higher percentage, the more leads you're going to convert into appointments. And we know from there, because of leads of appointments, you're going to get more closings. You're going to hit your actual income goals, your profit goals. All right, so think about this. If you're converting at a low percentage, this should tell you that you have a lead conversion challenge. All right. The challenge is not the number of leads generated in this instance, right? But it's your ability to get them to the appointment. All right. So one, it's a question of, do you have leads in your database and are you tracking all those leads to getting to the appointment? Now from there, you could develop, there's a lot of different ways to build skills to kind of walk through, but just knowing that that's important. If you've got leads that are coming in, you're converting at a low percentage based on the rates, then there's opportunity to build your skill set. And no judgment in that, okay? You are where you are right now. It doesn't matter even if you feel defeated, or maybe that's the case here, if you're seeing some rates, you feel defeated on where you're currently on those rates, don't, right? This is presently where you're at. You're amazing at other things. You just have an opportunity to lead into lead follow-up at a higher level. So be excited about this awareness that just by focusing on this skill, your business is going to change. Focus on nothing else. You get the opportunity to build on this skill. All right. So sometimes in lead conversion, yeah, it's based on the number of leads in your database. Sometimes it's just based on the leads that are being cultivated at current time, right? But what's important here is you evaluate your business and what works for you, right? And then repeat that same measure of success each time you calculate your conversion rates. Right, it's time on task over time. All right, so what I want to do here, we're going to take 5 minutes on your participant guide, those calculations. At least if you don't have your own, right, do a hypothesis here, your best guess, your best estimate of what your conversion rates are. If you have a moment to open up Command or your CRM and see those leads and how many appointments that you've gotten, then do so, right? Or maybe it's an awareness, you know what, out of all this, I'm not tracking anything. How do I best do that? Right. So we're going to take 5 minutes. We're going to complete the calculations there on the conversion rates, and then we'll come back. All right, welcome back. Trust that that was insightful if you had your conversion rates present there. And, or if not, maybe it's an opportunity to realize, hey, I got to start tracking this. I'm a purposeful business owner and know that this lead follow up and these conversions are important to grow more business. All right, so just take a step before we jump back into slides here. I did want to bring up again this metaphor as we're talking about fishing, right? And getting all of our gear together, bringing in this metaphor. You're at the lake, you got your rod and tackle, and you got your bait in the water here, right? How am I showing up as fish swim by, as I'm getting nibbles? Maybe I have actually a fish on the hook, right? Am I showing up by understanding what's attractive and following up consistently, right? And so in this, am I just throwing out the rod one time, and if nothing bites, I'm just reeling in and said, hey, you know what? That's not worth it. This thing doesn't work. This whole fishing thing, it's just not going to end up working. So equate that maybe if you're doing open houses and you do one follow-up call and nobody answers. Now you call 15 people from the open house, nobody answers. You get one answer, like, oh, thanks, but no thanks. All right. Don't be defeated in that. They're still ready, willing, and able. You got to follow up the appointment. Keep casting that same bait, keep following up the same way. It'll happen. The appointments will happen. Don't switch the bait. Don't go to another lead source or another way of finding leads when you haven't mastered the one that you're really excited about. All right, dedicate yourself to one. All right, moving on here. Improving your conversion rate, right? We went through some of those conversion rates and got a little bit more of awareness of what yours is. So we're going to say, how do we improve it? Great, next step, right? So on your conversion rate page, we're going to stay on shift to the improve your conversion rate page in your participant guide there. So once you understand what your conversion rate is, or you're gaining an awareness of that, you can move. Let's bring back in the 6 personal perspectives here. We can move from E to P. I remember that from day one. If you don't, go back and check it. The first part of session 1 was going through the 6 personal perspectives. E to P being entrepreneurial to purposeful, right? So once you understand that conversion rate, you get to be more purposeful in actually improving it. You get to gain insights and getting more purposeful in what will ultimately bring you more closed transactions. All right. So, what are some activities you can engage in to improve your conversion rates? Well, here's some options here. As you'll see, time block. How many of us just have a 2-hour, 3-hour slot of lead generation on our calendars? Whoop. I did. Do I have time blocked for lead conversion? That knowing I'm stepping into that, my goal is to ask for the appointment. So, and if it's on there, how many times I've erased it, allowed just to kind of go through, not ever happen, or allow something else to fill that. I've erased it and I haven't replaced it, put it somewhere else in my calendar. All right, another one here, use systems and conversations. Practice conversations, practice the dialogues, and asking for the close. Master your buyer and seller presentations. Practice them. You don't want to practice on the client or the customer, the potential client. All right, that's kind of like malpractice. Wouldn't that be the case? You would hope that your doctor, your physician wouldn't step in in your situation and not have practice whatsoever in medical school or in their preparation to becoming your physician, right? Don't perform malpractice. Step in and practice these so you know how to best serve them. It's not tricking them. It's not just being salesy to get them to the close. No, you're building this skill set to know how to best help them. If you don't build this skill set, you don't know what they want, how they want it, or why they want it, when, all those 6 connection questions. If you don't know that, you're not going to be the best agent to help them. So this skill set it's our responsibility to help them. It's not just about getting the appointment. This is how it's a win-win. Starting to make sense here? All right. So, of course, these conversations, as you're having them, they're going to be a powerful, powerful tool that can help you what to say and what you intend to say in the most powerful and impactful way. So if you ever looked at a script and thought, you know what, that doesn't sound like me. Well, I'm sure there's probably a lot of things you currently say that didn't really sound like you at some point in time in the past. All right. That's absolutely the case for these new. As you practice them, you begin to internalize them and they come out authentic to who you are. It's just practice. All right. So use also systems, again, here in this systems and conversations that support your lead conversion, right? Make sure you have the right steps at the right time to continue to gain that mind share, that those touch campaigns or those smart plans that we talked about, 19 to connect, 1 to cement, 36 to convert. So on the third one here, don't neglect any part of your database. Connect with the whole database. Reconnect with each person. And when you do, ask for referrals. Right? A lot of us have a lot of folks in our phone or Facebook friends that would love to know how we can best help them or help their friends and family. Yet we neglect them and go find strangers to work extra hard to build rapport when I've already done that with my database. Right? So don't neglect those people. Why would you go find more people to possibly not follow up with? Begin with your database. Don't neglect them. All right. Not just for your leads, for your sphere of influence, your contacts. As a tech trainer, I've mentioned this many times. Almost anytime I do a training on Facebook ads, it's like, great, you're going to learn how to do great Facebook ads and get cheap leads. Yet ask yourself the questions: why would you spend money if you're not if you're not currently following up with your database, the people that already know, like, and trust you? Why would you spend money to meet strangers, to work really hard to already find more people that will eventually know, like, and trust you, only to possibly not follow up with them again? That doesn't make sense. Right? Speaking to myself again here. All right. This is my internal dialogue, self-talk. All right. Hopefully it doesn't feel like I'm talking at you. This is a passion in mind because I've failed a lot of times at this. All right. So last piece here, prioritize the qualified leads. Know who to prioritize. This is what I'm really excited about. An upcoming session in this lead follow-up segment, you're going to learn how to prioritize these potential clients. Right, and prioritizing and converting these qualified leads while still working on the rest of your database. Still working on the rest of your database. Still working on the rest of your database. It's a really great section, easy way to categorize it. Excited for you all to join into that. And yet, yes, we've given intention to have meaningful conversations while still connecting with the rest of our database. Okay. All right. So through here, let me go. Make sure we're on the right slide there. There we go. Kind of wrapping some of this up as we're coming almost to a close here, right? We've talked about this. Every lead has a potential to turn into a piece of business. And you've already learned in other sessions, hopefully you heard it again here, there's no such thing as bad leads. Leads are people. People have real estate needs. It's a matter of you figuring out when you can best connect, when it makes sense for them. So with this lead conversion model, you've learned these pieces: how to capture the appropriate information to get a hold of the lead, how to connect with them, to assess their needs and establish a relationship. Again, those 6 connection questions. Cultivate the relationship. Follow up in a way that makes sense and in a way that maybe you've even received. All right, and then again, close by asking for the appointment. You're in control of that. All right, I guess we haven't said this yet. This is an important piece here. Yes, you're in control of every single one of these steps, but you're also in control of making the ask, of moving them to this close. No one else. All right. No one is just going to, well, it rarely happens that somebody says, hey, come help me buy a house, just out of the blue. I have no inaction of your own. Right. Maybe a close friend or family member that you might have made an ask for 2 years ago might come back and say, hey, yeah, I remember that conversation you had 2 years ago, and yeah, can you help me buy a house? I wouldn't leave the chance, though. It's up for you to follow up and ask for the appointment. All right, so we're gonna wrap up here, and I'm gonna go through these ahas here. Ask yourself the question: do you feel like you've been able to understand the lead conversion model? Do you understand the lead conversion, that lead conversion model? Could you recite it now? What are those 4 C's? And in what order? Which one's the toughest one? Which ones we find the most struggle in? Also, do you feel like you further developed your system, or at least maybe the next step in identifying how to develop your system for capturing, cultivating, and closing leads? And then lastly, how well do you feel like you've been able to apply, or at least know how to begin to apply proven methods to increase your conversion rate? Little checkpoints there. Ask yourself also, how's your mindset right now? How's your mindset? Oftentimes, because I'm gonna put this out here, there's probably somebody that maybe is stuck with us through all this, realizes this is a pain point, and said, "Yeah, I'm struggling with this right now. I 100% resonate. This is my biggest struggle. Consistently communicating and cultivating over time to get to the appointment. I am not good at it." How's your mindset in that? How's your mindset? Is it serving you? Do you have some limiting beliefs that that's not who you are? It can be. What are those limiting beliefs? What are those let's call them non-truths of preventing you from actually following up and serving people in the way that you should be able to? How can you rewrite those limiting beliefs or those lies to speak to the truth of what you want to do and who you can become in your follow-up processes? All right, so we're wrapping up. This is the end of the content. Would love to hear any ahas that you shared through. Share this with someone else as well, because I guarantee if you're in this piece, don't keep it alone. If you feel like you're struggling in this, you say, "Hey, I know that I've got some system. I understand the system now and how to apply that." Bring somebody along with you. You're not the only one. And this is, I'd argue, probably the number one struggle for all agents that haven't mastered this yet. All right. Bring somebody along in this. Say, "Hey," just simply say, "Hey, you know what? My follow-up stinks right now. I want to get better at it. How about you? Let's do this together. Don't go at this alone." Of course, reach out to your coach in the market center, where the productivity coach. If you have a MAPS coach, say, I want to develop a system and habits around lead follow-up that makes sense in a way that I'm comfortable with. And but again, don't keep it to yourself. We are going to move on to our daily success system. So in your market centers, if you are live now in the market centers, then it's time to jump in the role play, practice the forward conversation. Maybe you want to practice some of these 6 connection questions or some of the closes that were in your participant guide, right? Whatever makes sense to have you take action that you feel like you need best right now. Of course, you have the opportunity to lead generate together, right? Or, maybe this is a time to maybe put lead gen on pause. You haven't followed up with a lot of leads. It's okay to do that now too. So if you're in your market center, we're going to shift over that. You might have a gap, maybe some lunch or a little break before you do that. And yet make sure you lean into that. If you're watching this by yourself, still take this opportunity. Where is that presently in your calendar? Maybe you just had this little time to watch this. Ask yourself, where is it in my calendar to actually role play, practice these conversations, lead generate? Where is my lead cultivation portion of on my calendar? Right? If it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. It needs to exist. Maybe that's step 1 you need to take. All right. Okay. But that's your success system, of course, writing those notes and also the daily 10-5-1. I hope you had this great time, or at least got some good information here, maybe through some flawed delivery here. Yet I am passionate about it. If nothing else, maybe it came with some passion. And yet I hope you're in the mindset to begin catching and not just be a casual fisherman or fisherwoman there. Go and catch the fish, because you can do it. It is simple. We got to work through some limiting beliefs and developing new habits, but it can be done. Love to hear your successes. We can't wait to see you on the next Ignite session. Have a great one.